Welcome back, you filthy exiles. So obviously in about like 7 to 8 hours, we have the Necro Settlers League, as they're calling it, in the private league window. Anyway, I did theorycraft like a bunch of builds at the start of the league. I never really got to playing them because I was just really busy with different things going on in life and work and everything else in between. But I did have a build that I was sitting on for quite some time. Now, for those of you who have played Path of Exile for a very long time, you'll know what this item is. It did get some buffs over the years, but basically the way that the Bringer of Rain works is, and by the way, this was once upon a time a legit build, and it was around when stat sticking was a thing, so you can Google that or YouTube what stat sticking was in Path of Exile. They got nerfed out a long time ago, but anyway, it was a thing. So basically, the Bringer of Rain, what it basically gives you is gives you added, level 30 melee physical damage, level 30 faster attacks, level 30 blind, which is really good on this build. Increased block, it gives you like base attacks, which is pretty good. And it gives you like a good amount of armor and evasion as well, though we're not going to be using the evasion, but we're going to be getting a lot of armor from this, and like 200 to 300 HP, right? 20% chance to gain endurance charges when you block. The caveat being, you're basically naked, right? So you're not going to be able to use chest piece armor, so you're going to be running around exposed, right? Now that would sound bad, except if you've played this build before and you know this item, with the buffs that came into the league, it actually turned out to be a pretty advantageous build to sort of think about playing. And we enter the tree that I have theory crafted with this item. So, number one, there is a bit of dex and intelligence balance that needs to be done, but for the most, the gear that you can see is pretty like simplistic. And I'll preface this is not going to be like gameplay at this stage. This is a theory crafting video, so if you want to see gameplay, you can watch it on stream from tomorrow night, and hopefully the build works and I'll do build updates, or I'll say it failed, but I'm actually reasonably certain this build will be pretty okay. And on the basis of, we've got a couple of like crafted swords. We got Bringer of Rain, which is a pretty cheap item. I'll put like a little thing on the window to show. It's like a 1C item, and it's really common with cards that you get dropping. Tanawahi, which is dirt cheap, though the implicit is just a corrupt, so you can get rid of that. And then basically just like some basic Titan Greaves. Now I do have All's Uprising with Pride in the final build here, and a couple of Amethyst Rings and a Reslythers, and then basically you can take the Tincture out, right? You lose damage if you take the Tincture out, but you still get 12.7 mil, right? But the interesting thing is the way that base Dual Strike works, which is why I find this build really interesting. So, Dual Strike itself, this is a 4-link setup, that's technically a 7-link setup, and, we get 199k effective hit pool. Now, take that for what you will, like, we're going to cap out resistances, get about 17,000 armor, and we're going to be relying on lucky block, right? So, 88% block, and if we can increase that wherever we can, we want to do that. Bearing in mind, this is lucky block using 2 swords, no shield, so basically, it's a totally different way of playing block, right? And we'll go into the trees very shortly, but I just want to sort of go through the build. Now, Dual Strike is really interesting in that you get 100% more crit chance against enemies that are on full life and 90% more damage with hits and ailments against enemies that are on full life. So, if you're fighting an enemy for the first time, and we click this on, you go automatically from 12.7 mil to 29.413 mil on the first hit that you hit. So you just crank the enemy, right? So, you get that first hit in, and then your subsequent hits get slower, but that's not necessarily true, because the way that the Gladiator now works, and this is predicated on if we have enough defense to be able to sustain in this build too, and that's another question, but basically off of the War of Attrition node here, so the longer the fight goes on, the more that your damage goes up to 100% cap, right? So every 1 second that goes by, you get a 1% damage increase. So, for example, if we do our first hit for 29 mil, and they have damage mitigation or whatever it is, then, we're in the fight for 30 seconds, we go to 16 mil, we're in the fight for like 50 seconds, we're going to 19 mil, we're in the fight for the full 100, we're going to 25 mil cap, not 1,000, and if the enemy's on full life, if you just run around, you're getting hit for 58 million. Theoretically, right? So theoretically this works, and I haven't tested this, but based on everything, this sort of seems like it will work to a degree. Now, just talking about the PoB setup here, There's no like weird numbers. Power charges we're generating from Assassin's Mark, and we could probably find like the Blue Nightmare or Blue Dream to be able to do this more efficiently, or another means of doing this. Frenzy charges is built into when you block, and also the sword node as well. So we would take that on here. So I've got a couple of things to optimize in this tree. Endurance charges you're going to get because it's built into the Bringer of Rain. So you get 20% chance to gain an endurance charge when you block. And you also gain that from taking the Swagger node down here. Actually, that's not true. Swagger gives you 25% chance to gain Frenzy charges when you block. And we got max block at 88% across the board for spell and for attack, right? So we're going to be constantly blocking. Arguably, it's not going to be a major issue when you're fighting the boss with Frenzy and endurance charges. Power charges are only going to be the questionable thing. We get Onslaught from the Tanuahi. We get Adrenaline from the Tanuahi. We pick up Rage by just taking 1 point in Rage on hit. And because we have a 7.21 APS, it's not going to be a massive issue. We also do splash damage with Tribal Fury and Attack Mastery, so additional hit. So we hit 1 additional hit, but we could get better gloves. We would lose the Adrenaline from the Tanuahi, which we'd have to compensate for, but we could hit anywhere up to 4 enemies at once and then do 4 enemy shotgun splash damage. So it's pretty, like, it's lucrative, right? Consecrated Ground, I think in this setup I don't have the flask for it, but we could run like Rational Doctrine or something like that. And we're talking like Endgame, and I do have a better tree for this too. So yeah, basically defensively, like it's reasonably solid defense. Like there's a little work to be done. It does require a bit of luck that you don't die. We do have like stun immunity as well, so we take like Unwavering Stance, so we can't get stunned either. If we have like 10 enemies nearby, we get a bit more defense. But yeah, overall, like, I'm not entirely sure how this build will end up playing out, but I sort of have a sneaking suspicion it'll be reasonably solid. And we also assume that enemies are blinded too, which we don't have a blind percentage. So say we hit like 30% blind, that's going to stop enemies from coming in and damaging you even more. And we haven't really played with any of the other stuff here. We've got Intimidate and Crush and stuff like that, which is built into other elements of the build. And this is Guardian and Pinnacle boss damage. So overall, like, from a theory build standpoint, it ticks the boxes. Like, we should be able to do the damage to be able to sustain fights and to be able to block enemies. But theoretically, I don't know how the build works until I play it. Now, the next question you'll be asking is, what do we do from a league start setup? And this is strictly theoretical, right? So I didn't want to play this build before the league start or the league reset because I just want to have fun playing the league reset, playing something experimental. But I did put a tree together if you want to do that. So anyway, let's have a look at the next tree. Okay, so early leveling tree. Now, I did give you level 20, right? Geared on the tree. I haven't changed the gear settings. Level 20, 35, right? So you know where to go. Up to level 50, we start to unlock more points. And then up to level 75, and then up to level 96. Obviously, if I give you a level 100 tree, that's just ridiculous. And we get to like 5 million DPS with Cull here, and we still get like 176,000 effective hit pool after everything, and a good amount of armor and max cap reses and stuff like that, right? So this is before you get like better swords, and you can definitely get better swords than even in the last tree. It's just going to be like the best swords that you can possibly get into the build is going to get your DPS up, but balancing dexterity is going to get a little more tedious because it is a little harder. As you'll see, I fully balanced this tree as well, so you know, if it always says you have too many sockets in your helm, but you'll also identify in the helm itself, I've only got 4 sockets. It's because of the Nightmare Bassinet or the Bringer of Rain. It has like 4 skill gems, was it 3 skill gems built into it, plus 4 skill gems, and PoB just can't seem to compute that because this item just hasn't been used in such a long time. Anyway, so when we talk about like gearing and stuff like that, basically we use 2 Ichimonjis, right, which are just relatively cheap swords that you can get on the market with no real cost. Now, these are just really good early swords. They give you increased mana reservation efficiency and also just straight up attack speed, flat damage. Like, this is all the good stuff that you need to get a build working. Obviously, Bringer of Rain, we need that to make this build work. As you're leveling up, you're just going to use like a standard 4-link setup or something like that as you're leveling, right? So Dual Strike you get at level 1, and you can just keep like playing Dual Strike throughout. And once you get your Tribal Fury, which is the splash node here, then the build gets significantly easier to play. But up until then, you just use like melee splash and just level up standardly. The base damage on Dual Strike is pretty strong, so you should be okay as long as you keep upgrading these 2 swords, right? And then basically beyond that point, you're going to get Tanuahi as soon as you can get Tanuahi. This is just like basic Tanuahi, by the way. There's no implicits or anything like that. Again, the greaves that are in the endgame build, just the best greaves you can get. I would just recommend using Forsters for this. Marylene's Fallacy as well is probably the best early leveling unique amulet you can get with Fatal Blade as your anoint. This is going to give you pretty much a huge amount of critical strike. And it's also going to give you critical strikes cull, and we get like 37% right. And we can make this better because if we had on the Greaves Brittle, for example, this would throttle your crit up by another 6% overall from the Brittle, and that's going to get you up to like maybe 50% crit, something like that. And you have an 8.07 APS, so 4 out of every 8 hits that you hit in one sitting are going to blast enemies with crits. So it's not a massive issue. You're going to cull, and then you do your Tribal Fury and everything else, right? Then you have your amethyst rings, right? And these aren't like the craziest amethyst rings. There's nothing like really special about these rings apart from the all resist, and they're relatively mid rolls too. Reslythers is going to be the only complicated item. Depends on how expensive this is. I think after everybody played Slams now, Reslythers will go down in price because Slams were not as good as what they were sort of pitched as. They're good, but not like groundbreaking. And then beyond that, it's just like basic flasks, right? And you get charges based on, critical strike, which means you can sustain all your flasks, and then an eternal life flask. And this has like no real duel setup, so I haven't done cluster duels, I haven't done any of that. So arguably, like, you could take this from where it is and play with this, and that's exactly what I'm going to do, and really flesh this out. This is just like a baseline sort of tree that you can work with. But that's it from the gearing perspective. Let's go through the gem setups. Okay, so for gem setups, you're basically going to run Helm. You'll have Dual Strike, Impale, Volatility, Multi-Strike, and the Helm will pick up the rest. In our gloves, where we're going to run Precision, Flesh and Stone, Blood and Sand, and War Banner. So, did I say Blood and Sand? I meant Blood and Sand. So basically, War Banner, your stat configuration will be just moving Valor to 50, and you should be Gucci. And then basically, Assassin's Mark on hit with Life Tap on Weapon 2. We do enough leech to sustain that, so it's perfectly fine. Then we're going to run Automation, Blood Rage, Phase Run, and Molten Shell. Now, if you don't want to run Phase Run, you could take that out because it will affect your Blood Rage with your Frenzy stacks, but I don't think that's going to be a major issue in the build. And then we're going to run Purity of Elements, and this is going to cap out our reses. Because we lose that chest piece, it is something we have to compensate for, but this also gives us ailment immunity, which is really good for this build. And we have enough mana to sustain the on hit as well, which is good. And yeah, we leech back, and we also generate enough mana from leech to be able to sustain. Theoretically, it'll probably require a bit of tweaking, but it should be fine. Anyway, that's it for the gearings. That's it for the gem setups on this build. So let's talk about the tree and basically how it works to level the tree up. Okay, so as noted in the tree, I wasn't supposed to tick that. As noted in the tree, we've got a leveling setup. So level 20, this is going to take you down into Feline Swiftness. You want to get Dervish. And basically, we're targeting like early nodes where you're going to get like block, because we're going to be relying on sword block, right? Which is our defensive layering in this build. And then basically up to Art of the Warrior, to Master of the Arena, and then to the Spirit of War. And this is how we start to manage our mana outright. And then we're going to take it to level 35. So we've got the Dual Socket, Unwavering Stance. We're a bit dumb and not very agile, so we need stuff for that. But the main focus here is going to be getting to Tribal Fury by about level 30, right? So that's going to give you a fair bit of an advantage moving forwards. And then the non-Veil Strike skills target one additional enemy, which is going to make you pretty damn strong. That's going to mean you hit 2 enemies instead of 1. And then we want to start getting Blade of the Cunning and moving down to this lower point down here. Then we go level 50. We're going to start taking Bastion Breaker. We want more maximum physical attack damage because we want to throttle front end damage. And then I'd recommend coming down, getting Rage, to Brutal Skewering, up into Versatile Combatant, into Cloth and Chain, and Golem's Blood as well. And then we come up and we get Bloodless, because at this point we need a bit of HP in our build. And then up to 75 is when we start getting a bit more creative. So I'd suggest moving down and picking up all these block nodes. This is going to increase your defensiveness. And then also Savage Skewering is going to increase your Impale as well, which is a huge advantage for this build. We get another dual socket in here. Now you can get way better duels than this, by the way. So these are really basic duels. So yep, do with that what you will. And then we want to come up here and grab Cannibalistic Rite, Mana Mastery as well, up in a Juggernaut, and our Razor's Edge and Blade Master Sword nodes. We also want to take the 8% chance to get Frenzy charges when you hit a unique enemy, which means you're going to hit really fast when you're fighting an enemy that's a unique boss or something of that nature. And then finally, basically, we're going to go level 96. So we go up, we grab endurance charges because we get that from blocking. That's part of the Nightmare Bassinet or the Bringer of Rain. We get another dual socket up here into our Disembowel and crit nodes, up into Barbarism, and then basically we're just going to clean up and add the rest of our points, and so increase crit chance there. And then basically finish up by going down into Twin Towers, which is 100% increased critical attack strike chance while dual wielding. So this is a dual wield build, right? So yeah, it's a little bit different to the usual builds that I play. That being said, relatively tanky and will get the job done. But yeah, that's basically it for the theory crafting on this build. Oh, and for Ascendencies, because obviously I haven't covered off on that, you want to go Determined Survivor up into one more skill, and then, more than skill, and then into Weapon Master and into War of Attrition. And this is going to get you to where you need to be. You could play around and play like Gratuitous Violence instead of War of Attrition, and that's also going to give you AoE bleed pop as well, if you want to do that, absolutely. Like, you will lose damage as you stay longer in a fight, but you will be able to take down maps pretty quicker. And in fact, thinking on this is probably not a bad early node to take for better clear speed. Okay, so hopefully this is just like a really interesting build. It was just something really different. I'm a bit bored of playing the standard league starters, which is why I did the curation video, which is a little safer for the first 5 builds that are tested. And then the last 5 are like builds that were working. In the case of what I want to play something that I haven't played before that's a little bit legacy, because we're going into PoE 2 anyway. Why not? You might as well like let down your hair and play something totally crazy. Hey, if you screw it up, start another tune and go again until you find something that works. But that's half the fun of finding builds, and in fact, it gets you into the right mind space for the 6th of December for Path of Exile 2, because this is exactly what we're going to be doing. Playing wild shit that doesn't make any sense, and then basically muddling our way through until we magically find builds that work, and we're like, holy damn, this is really awesome. Anyway, if you like this video, don't forget to like and sub to the channel. Don't forget to follow the Twitch and the X as well. All the links will be in the description below. And yeah, if you want to try this build, try it at your own risk. I'm not going to say it's going to work. I don't know yet. We're going to find out the hard way on stream tomorrow night when I'm home from work and all day Saturday. But anyway, I'll see you guys later and have a good one.